setup. But
the
all
intro is
right,
always
gents.
the intro is always the same, man. Block height 953-658.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
timestamp
So
this thing.
time stamped. All right, we're live. This is Daniel from the Canadian Bitcoin Conference with Waseem and Ben. Not Ben Workman, obviously. We're going to start in the run up to the Canadian Bitcoin Conference. We're going to start doing these live streams and podcasts and different things. Bring some guests on. So we're starting it today. It's been a busy few weeks in Bitcoin for myself and Ben. We've been doing a bit of traveling around some of the events, and then we're going to talk about kind of what's current and what's going on in Bitcoin. So, how's it going today, Waseem?
Doing good.
Good.
Southwest
Good.
Ontario. It's a rainy day, but hey, it's it's a little bit cold and windy out, just like it is in Bitcoin bear market territory.
Yeah, I know it's a
Very
big
fitting.
topic. Ben, not Ben Workman, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Just driving off from the island. Just got over the Confederation Bridge. My golf game's not doing so good, so gotta jump on my other passion, Bitcoin. Hopefully, you guys can pull me out of the doldrums.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I on that note, I posted a video of you hitting some golf balls at the Sat Street, the Bitcoin Open in at Glen Abbey earlier this week. We were up there on Monday, myself and Ben, representing the conference group. Really fun time. Lots of really good people there. Lots of good discussions about Bitcoin. You wouldn't really notice that it was a bear market. From or there wasn't really any discussions about that really, but really good day. Sat Street put on a good show. Bitcoin. What do you call the events company that did that? Bitcoin Sports Network.
Correct.
We met them in El Salvador, and then Ben's been to a few of their golf tournaments down there, and yeah, Ben was golfing for the Bitcoin group. They not going to tell you what place they came in, but they won a prize. So I mean that's something to be said.
Hey Ben, it looked good on video, man. Your strike there looked pretty legit. That drive looked pretty legit.
Which was nice because I think that was my first good drive. I walk up and he says, "Yeah, we're gonna hold a video." And right before I hit, he says, "Oh, it's going to be live." It's like, "Oh, that's good."
One take. That's what it takes. One take.
One take. And I'll tell you what we did. We ended up 7th place out of 36 or 40 teams, which was, I thought, fairly good for a ragtag group of guys. Your buddy Kieran was our Rory. He often we needed a shot to get on the green, and he was often our guy to. I think he went 7 for 7 for when we needed him. So he got the nickname Rory.
There's the guys kept calling him Wee Rory. There's Wee Rory.
We're all team Bitcoin. We're all winners at the end of the day. So
yeah, and we had the orange shirts. I got one for you as well, Waseem. So you'll be getting that in post. And lots of like I said, lots of great discussion, lots of good representation. Like so, simple representation there. A bunch of other companies. You can go to Sat Street or Bitcoin Sports Network's website, and they can you can see who was there. But really fun time. So that's
I wasn't there, but what I saw is, I mean, representation was pretty broad, right? Like it's not your just Bitcoin bros. There's definitely a lot of interest outside of kind of just your typical Bitcoin kind of crowd. So TradFi, traditional TradFi was there. There's definitely interest from other parties, right, coming into the space. So I mean, that's kind of my observation, just kind of looking at the space. Sure, we're in the depth of a bear market, deep value territory, as check on chain calls it, right? But at the end of the day, it is sparking interest, right? So I suspect, once we start seeing a price go up and we start hitting all-time highs, which inevitably we will go there, and maybe we should talk about it. But I mean, that's kind of exciting times, right? Because if you're getting this kind of interest here in deep in when the fear and greed index is like 15 or something, and people are not, it's really, Bitcoin's fallen off. Nobody's asking questions about it, right? You look at the Google searches, it's nowhere. nobody's interest. If people have lost interest, right? It's just nothing's happening in Bitcoin, which is fine. But you can ask yourself if there's interest from kind of the broader ecosystem, traditional finance at this time for the last 6 months when we're in this bear market. What's it going to look like when we start going on a tear again, which we will?
Yeah, and funny you say that. I mean, some of the representation that was there at that event, the legal offices, the law offices that are kind of starting to come in, and they've obviously, they've been working in the space in the background for a number of years. Family offices as well. We had some good conversations with some family offices, and then on the point of how we're doing in a bear market. We had a good discussion earlier this week with, I'm not going to say who it was, but people, TradFi and organizations who are, in the investment world, and they're looking at adding Bitcoin to their portfolio, fairly soon. So whether or not we're hitting the bottom or we're at the bottom, or we're hitting the bottom soon or we're at the bottom, they're starting to look at it as a viable, investment item to add to the investment. So yeah, it's bear market vibes, but I think we're still in a good position. So Absolutely. You want to go into some topics? Anything you want to talk about, Ben?
I mean, I'm geared up for the conference in and of itself, Industry Day and Canadian Bitcoin Conference. So I'm excited for us to kind of get towards those topics. But I'm always happy to talk price as well. Being on X right now, it's the bear market brings out the claws in everybody. It seems to be a lot of infighting amongst Bitcoiners right now, which I always see as a feature, not a bug. I think all of this ends up getting us more towards where Bitcoin should be going and getting to the truth. What is the truth? What is money? What is Bitcoin's purpose? So yeah, we're in the bear market doldrums. Are we at the absolute bottom? Are we nearing it? I think it's quite obvious that this would be an ideal time for individuals, family offices, etc., to start looking at this asset and starting to dollar cost average, because like you said, Waseem, check on Chain, Checkmatey there, as well as a few other technical analysts that I follow. We are certainly at one of the relatively speaking, the lowest periods of if you follow power law, etc., this is an opportune time for individuals to start allocating, start educating themselves on this thesis when everybody's distracted with SpaceX and AI and microchips and memory chips, etc. The real innovation here is digital absolute scarcity, where all value will kind of get sucked into. So I'm very excited to see where we get towards the conference. Very hopeful that we will start trending in an upward direction, because that always has people on a high. But bear markets are for the builders, and so for all those interested in Bitcoin and Bitcoin accessory, this conference is going to be a great event to be at for those that really want to meet the people that are in the space, and we do have those people coming. So, yeah.
Perfect. So,
yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, Waseem. Yeah, you talked about the SpaceX IPO there, and maybe that's something we can talk about. That went live this week. It was up. I don't know what was up, like 30% or.
Yeah, it came online like at one. It was kind of valued at 135, kind of, and it came online. I think for 140s, high 140s, and it popped up to like 170s, and then it ended in the 60s. I think 163 or something. So yeah, I mean, for the day, and we'll see how things go from here. In
your eyes, Waseem, do you see that trend continuing? Do you see the price going up for that, or do you see? I mean, I've heard a lot of things and talked to people, and there's a thought that rotation of capital goes from there, once the top hits and back into Bitcoin. What's your thoughts on that?
And there's interesting IPOs, right? So I mean, it's $1 trillion IPO that came online on Friday. So and that's not the only one. There's others that are going to definitely suck capital out of the room, and I know people are positioning to try to capture some of that upside. I think some of it is FOMO. People are trying to FOMO in. And admittedly, I mean, there's definitely narrative drives price here. There's a lot of interest in the market on a bunch of things that are happening, like the AI. You talked about the semiconductor space, Micron and memory, etc. I mean, that's definitely driving prices. Look at Micron, SanDisk, right? Western Digital, all those things are up. Like even Intel, which has been kind of sleeping for 25 years, right, has woken up, right? Many other names. So yeah, I mean, people are started looking at, okay, do I hold this Bitcoin thing that's on the way down and it's getting pummeled since October the 10th of last year, right? And how convicted am I? And I miss out on this AI trade, or do I rotate out, try to capture the upside and come back in and still capture the deep value territory we're in? So, and I think it's definitely testing people, right? So if this is the only capital you have and you've locked it all up in Bitcoin, you got to ask yourself, like, is this the right place for me to park my money? How convicted am I? And a lot of it is going to boil down to your time horizon. Like, what are you in it? How long are you in it for? And why are you in it? Right. So if you're looking for short-term gains, this is not the place for you to be, right? And certainly not the time for you to be in it. So if you're looking for long-term gains, then yeah, absolutely. Right. You're looking at 4-year cycle, plus, then this is definitely the right asset for you but you've got to be able to stomach the volatility. So, I like kind of what Lawrence Lepard sometimes, people ask him, how much money should I put into it? And you got to ask yourself, well, how much can you tolerate to be down, right, in a highly volatile asset, right? So if you put all your eggs in this basket and you're down 50% and you need that money, that could be an issue for you. So, so there's some rotation happening for sure in other segments. People want to kind of ride that rocket ship, literally, no pun intended, right up. And there's others, right? There's the AI trade has been going on all year, right? But this week has been definitely, or the last couple of weeks has been definitely telling, because ETF outflows have hit a milestone as well. So there's definitely rotation going on. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'll just add one thing. Like, you'll see it also in kind of like the Russell 2000, the IWM, right? Not the kind of the Mag 7. If you look at Mag 7s, or you look kind of the bigger names in the S&P 500 relative to the smaller names, there's a rotation going on. The IWMs outperformed the S&P, which kind of signals that there's rotation even coming out of Mag 7s going into other names and more traditional value-based plays. So 100% there's capital flows going all over the place, people positioning themselves to capture upside. And what's next? That's the question, the $1 million question.
Yeah. So I mean, on that, do you think the bottom's in?
Ben, what do you think?
I'm not a chartist. You're probably, well, you're not probably, you are most best to answer this question. I very much am a long-term view, very much a 40,000 foot up overview kind of guy. I really couldn't explain to you, RSI and oversold and the on-chain
all the
metrics.
technical jargon.
Technical, yeah. So, I'm a gut feel guy, and everybody. Well, everybody. I'm on X, and that is not everybody. That's one thing you kind of have to. We are so down a rabbit hole and niche on niche.
Oh,
The people that are all bottoms in, the bottoms in.
I think we're losing Ben.
Yeah, we're losing Ben. I mean, my perspective. I mean, you hear different things, when you look online and when you're trying to find the bottom or time the bottom. Like you said, my time horizon is, 5, 10, 15 years. It's not, it's not a couple of months. When I look at the previous bottom, the previous bottom in the last cycle, 2022, I think around September 2022 or so was around the last bottom. And I mean, as long as it doesn't go down to that price number again, that 20 grand, I'll be happy enough. But yeah, there seems to be different sentiment, whether it's this month, next month, whether it's below 60, in around the 50 mark. It's hard to tell, but I would say, like Ben, is going on gut feeling. I think it goes lower. I think we have a catastrophic event, some sort of credit, issue in the markets, or maybe this IPO starts to slide, from SpaceX, or something brings it down, and we and it brings Bitcoin down with it, and we hit below 60, and maybe hit 55. But again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you, right? I think realistically speaking, if you got to measure it in quartiles, right, we're probably closer to a bottom, maybe not the bottom, right? It's a really a fool's errand, right? Trying to catch the bottom, right? It's really a bit of a science to try to luck in the science, really, to try to catch the bottom. And even if it does dip, like I think if it dips down to the 50s, I wouldn't be surprised, right? But it may be very short-lived because, again, if we're already in deep value territory, people are going to be watching that. We're at already the 200-week moving average, which is usually a good bellwether indicator of, okay, potential bottoms here. You've got, got the power law, of course, right? We're kind of chugging along right at the bottom of that right now. I think we hit the 5th quartile, which means we've, 95% of the time we are above this area, right? So you got to ask yourself risk reward. So I may not be at the bottom, but there's 5% downside, 95% potential upside. But you got to kind of, if we zoom out, let's just zoom out for a second, right? Do you think Bitcoin's going to zero? Because, if it's not going to zero, then, I'm not asking you guys, I'm just saying, like, in general, like you have to test your own conviction here. Like if Bitcoin is not going to zero and I'm in this for the long term, then I may want to start nibbling a little bit here. Not necessarily sell all the stools at home, right? Not going to necessarily start selling shingles off the roof, but, maybe do some DCAing here. Because that's probably a better strategy than just trying to kind of all in, right, or whatever capital amount you want to put in near the bottom, right? Because finding that bottom, you could be sleeping and it happens at 3 a.m. in the morning and you missed it. So
yeah, maybe let's just change gears for a second. So one thing you posted this week was about the top 10 companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. 2 of them now, Tesla and SpaceX.
yeah.
What significance do you put into that in terms of where Bitcoin's going in the long term?
Well, it's meaningful in the sense that top 10 companies by market cap, right? So that's and they hold a pretty sizable chunk of Bitcoin. I think SpaceX has like 18,000 and Tesla has somewhere like 10 or 11,000. So it's not a small number, but that's me. And actually, Tesla had a lot more. So the question is, how many more? And we have to look at this over a long period of time, right? I mean, I don't expect it'll happen quickly. But you will start seeing more and more companies, and we are, right? I mean, maybe they're not the heavy hitters at the top, but there's a lot more. If you look at BitcoinTreasuries.net right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but there's probably upwards of 200 companies that have published the fact that they hold Bitcoin on balance sheet for various reasons, right? Some of it for some it's an actual business. For others, it's just a way for them to store value. And now we're starting to see more and more starting to think about SDRC, capital, digital credit, adding SATA to their balance sheet. Because, if you're looking at medium-term capital, stuff that you might need in the next 6 months or so, you don't necessarily want to park it in Bitcoin because it's too volatile and it's too risky. It's hard to sell to the board. But, on SDRC and SATA, that's digital credit is absolutely an instrument that, could have some potential value if you're a capital allocator in a Fortune 500 company.
Ben?
Yeah, well, in terms of the top 10 companies having two companies, we're 17 years away from a anonymous blog post to having 2 of the largest companies in the entire world, SpaceX, Tesla, having a meaningful position of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. What is a Bitcoin treasury company? for you to kind of like bring up the bitcointreasuries.net website, and there's 200 odd, companies. Is SpaceX it's a top 10 holder of Bitcoin, I believe, at around 18,000 ish Bitcoins.
It's number 7 or something. Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would call them a Bitcoin treasury company, yet they're one of the largest holders of Bitcoin. So, in terms of narrative, I think it's massive, right? And I don't even think the narrative has picked up on that story quite yet. We're obviously very quite aware of it. It was a great post by you, Waseem, to kind of bring light to that. And you look at who the top 10 companies are, and they are predominantly AI companies, or companies that have grown into an AI company. And in a world of absolute abundance, in a world of this agentic AI, abundant intelligence, I believe my thesis will be that these intelligence machines land on Bitcoin as the superior store of value. I believe they're going to land on Bitcoin as being the superior medium of exchange, global asset. And so I think the narrative is going to become stronger and stronger as time goes on, that shareholders are going to demand their boards to hold Bitcoin, have a meaningful position, 5%, 10%. Obviously, not every single company is going to become a Bitcoin treasury company where they're using the capital markets to kind of acquire Bitcoin. But then that said, to completely counteract that, we have these companies that are, 10, 20, 30, 40 price to earnings kind of book ratios or book values. So, you see SanDisk, you see, was it Micron, and over the last few years, NVIDIA have just reached quite, insane valuations compared to their earnings. They're going to need to capture that on the balance sheet. They're going to start going, wait a minute, like this narrative can change quickly. Competition can come in very.
I think you're saying
There's nothing wrong.
Ben is
An ATM, a shelf register. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Okay, apologize. Yeah, I'm not driving. I found, I'm at the big stop here. So, to kind of finish up my rambling here, I think you're going to see these companies look at their evaluations and think, how do we capture the upside that we have right now? And where are you going to capture it? Well, you're going to want to capture it on the balance sheet. And what asset best holds value? What asset is the one that you can, trust? Treasuries, cash, physical buildings, AI data centers. It's competition and depletion. So I think you're going to see Bitcoin on the balance sheet be the running narrative, as well as you brought up digital credit. I think that is likely in the short term to be the stronger narrative, where it is a product that these companies are much more used to, right? Like it's a fixed income product. So these treasurers it's not a sell to the board. They don't have to get all the approvals that they would with putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet versus, hey, we're going to, hold this, fixed income product, this perpetual preferred product that offers, 11.5, 13%, etc. So all that to say, I think the clear winner is Bitcoin. I think the narrative has shifted to shiny object, and I think once the shine comes off the AI play and the picks and shovels play, I think everyone's going to come back to absolute digital scarcity, and the FOMO will be very real.
Yeah. Well, can I just touch on the agentic AI piece you mentioned there? So if any of you get a chance, I'm going to give a plug to Steve Saretsky and the Lunar guys. They had a guy on I think they just posted it a couple of days ago, called Michael Nicoletos. I don't know if any of you guys seen this guy, but he's an investment manager, I think, over in Europe somewhere. But he seems to be very clued in on the digital assets and a whole. He's got a range of different topics that he covers. But one thing he was talking about, and really, and I was kind of, I need to finish the podcast and go through it in detail, but he talked very much about the AI agents talking to each other, and that's been kind of discussed over the last number of years, is that's where the future of this is going. When you have an agent that's paying a bill, for you, and an agent that's receiving a bill from another company, and they kind of dig a little bit into what that looks like in terms of what they're going to use, and they had talked about the stablecoin piece, and the stablecoin piece, then you'll have a wallet with a bank that's got a stablecoin in it. But what the interesting thing I found is he was talking about different chains, and what chains might be used for what, for what function, and he talked about the verification of identity piece. I mean, the KYC,
Yep.
and I think that's where Bitcoin is going to be, that verification of identity piece. From what I can see, and if it is the stable coins that are being paying agent to agent, maybe it's the Bitcoin or the Lightning Network or whatever, but the verification is the real piece that he didn't go into detail on. I think that's really where the key, the Bitcoin plays in that. I don't know. I don't know too much detail about it, but that's what I find interesting.
There's one thing we can be sure of, right? That we're kind of living through some very dramatic changes that are happening, right? Whether it be technological changes. We're starting to talk about data centers in space, right? So and there's companies going online to actually make it happen. So I mean, it's a really kind of right now it's a dopamine kind of driven world, right? Like there's a lot of kind of things going on in the markets. We're trying to hear about things, and capital is moving, trying to keep up with all of this, and everybody's trying to hedge their positions and trying to make money, and especially quick money, right? Quick dollars. And it's become a bit like a casino, to be honest with you. Like, you kind of look at these markets, and it feels like a gambling mentality, right? You just want to make a quick fix, quick buck, and you're out. So at the end of the day, I mean, Bitcoin's boring now. It's not exciting anymore. You used to have those wild swings, right? You can kind of come in, and broader crypto, right? But Bitcoin specifically, right? It's just not as exciting as it used to be. Now, I think Ben is saying it's going to be exciting again at some point. And yeah, he's probably right. But if you zoom out again, right? And I like to zoom out. So Amy Oldenburg, who Ben, you and I saw her in Vegas, right? When she's from Morgan Stanley, right? She's running the Bitcoin ETF that they just launched. She was on Natalie Brunell, and she was talking about, Natalie was asking about, well, what, because Morgan Stanley was very much anti-Bitcoin for quite some time. They're actually the late comers to the party. They launched their ETF almost 2 years later than BlackRock did. But interestingly enough, she was quite vocal about the fact that she's been a Bitcoiner for quite some time, but their customers started to ask for Bitcoin. And Ben, you're drawing the parallel to shareholders asking the board to start looking at Bitcoin on their balance sheets. You might be right. Like, I mean, it's no different than sovereign wealth funds looking around and seeing other countries doing it. There's some game theory going on there. You got, and if you even look at yourself, in your, you run your own balance sheet, your own personal balance sheet at home, right? You've got some investments that you've got. That's your balance sheet. So what are you putting on that balance sheet, right? Everybody's doing something different. Companies are asking the same thing, right? Saylor in 2020 thought that the best way for him to allocate the cash hoard that he had was to put it into Bitcoin. Every company is going to have to make a decision at some point. And now with this point that you made, Dan, about the whole AI layer, that's a whole other layer of interesting things that are going to happen in that space that are going to get people to think about, especially if you start seeing like the AI rails start building on top of the digital rails, which we know is coming. And in fact, that you could even argue is already here in some ways with some of these stable coins. Like the rails are starting to get built out in that space. But Bitcoin will be a beneficiary of that for sure, right? So it's a really dynamic, it's a really interesting time. There's just so many things going on, right? And what we're trying to do here in the conference as well, right? Just by the way, like, just may bring this full circle to what we're trying to do at the conference is there's a lot of narratives going on in the Bitcoin space. There's some infighting. There's some folks that don't like this whole digital credit thing. The fact that there's some institutions starting to capture large amounts of Bitcoin in their balance sheet, for some of the maxis, that's not necessarily what they want to see. Cool, great conversation. There's this whole knots versus core debate that kind of went quiet for a bit, but that's still there and brewing in the background. We've got this whole quantum FUD that's happening. And by the way, quantum, I'm starting to see a lot more focus on that in the last little while. So that's starting to catch some momentum as well to try to get ahead of that problem, because it is a real existential problem, right? Quantum, maybe not this year or next year, but it is an existential problem. So we need to probably start thinking about how to resolve it. Not that we don't have solutions, but it is something we need to talk about. And then the whole money side of it, like going back to the roots of Bitcoin, self-sovereignty, money. We always go back to that. Like nothing beats self-sovereignty. Basically having your own cold wallet. Holding it yourself, nothing beats that. All the other stuff, the proxies, whether you do it through, equities, or you do it through ETFs, or you do it through digital credit, fine. I mean, that's a whole other angle. But at the end of the day, it boils down to, you have the opportunity to kind of do it yourself. That has never existed historically before, right? Where you could exit the system if you chose to.
Yeah, and those probably that was highlighted this week in my home country in Northern Ireland. There was obviously some issues socially, and then
we like to call you from Toronto. Then we call you from Toronto.
Well, I mean, you asked me what's going on over there earlier on this week,
yeah.
And I mean I think that and Joey's, it looks like he's in the chat and he's had some discussions about it. There's there'll be more of that. There'll be more civil unrest, and we've seen the playbook in Canada. And actually earlier this year there was a protest in the south of Ireland for the fuel protests, and without Bitcoin they don't last long, because they'll shut down the GoFundMe, they will shut down your bank accounts, they'll stop people donating to you through and they'll put the fear of God into people where people don't want to be associated with that. But Bitcoin's the only way to circumvent that. And I think if there is an organized revolution in some way, Bitcoin will have to be part of it, because it's the only way to fund those things. He said, but Joey said civil unrest will seem moderate if this keeps going on. Yeah, that's true.
Well, so we have short-term memory though. That's the problem, right? I mean, the track convoy wasn't that long ago.
It's crazy how many people don't and when I talk to people throughout the world, lots of people, they have no idea what happened and no idea what what was shut down, how it impacted people's lives, all that kind of stuff. Like, I know we don't want to maybe get into that debate, but it's crazy that the role Bitcoin played in that, and it should have been more, but yeah, it is what it is. But so yeah, it's true. It'll keep happening. So listen, we're 30 minutes in. We wanted to keep these short and sweet. Any other topics you want to cover before we close this off?
I had one maybe final comment, but go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, I think for the most part, we've kind of touched on. There's a lot of other topics that we can go into, but push it for another day. I'm excited for us to kind of get the frequency of these out. I'm really quite excited for us to start announcing the individuals that we have committed for Industry Day as well as the conference. And I am excited to bring them on as guests so we can have everybody get a taste of what's to come. I think this is going to be bigger and better every year with the conference. Personally, Industry Day, I'm quite excited for to have you guys allow me to be involved with that. And we've got, like I say, some individuals that For a lot of Canadians that aren't able to get down south to where a lot of these conferences are, I've been to dozens, I've probably been to 15 different conferences, many of them multiple times. And
you're a real roadie.
I'm a roadie. I'm a fanboy. No, I've been to a number of conferences, and I can say unbiased that the Canadian conference is the highest signal to price ratio, and this industry day is again going to be the highest signal to price ratio. The What you end up paying to go to these conferences, again, speaking from a Canadian perspective, and if you're an American listening to this, you're going to get a discount traveling the border. Um, this is a unbelievably fantastic opportunity for an individual, a family office, a business, a public entity, Canadian public entity, to come in and understand what the role of Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and how, if you acquire enough Bitcoin, how do you put that to use? So Bitcoin derivatives. So this is going to be a monumental for Canadian history moment, in my opinion. I think this is going to be something that you'll look back at and go, man, I was in the room. And very excited for Industry Day and for the conference, quite obviously. And we're going to have some heavy hitters in the room.
Ben's looking for an airport to be named after him, I think.
I was trying to think of other Canadian monumental moments like that I can think of. The only one I can think of is the Tragically Hip. Maybe the last concert. Is it going to be like that?
Oh, well,
I'm a new Canadian, as some people might say, but so that's as close as I can get. You're what do you think, Ben?
Well, I mean, that was one of the most sentimental and tear-jerking days in Canadian history. This is going to be uplifting. This is going to be about new beginnings, not the end of the greatest rock band of all time. No, this is this will be. When I went to the very first Canadian Bitcoin conference, got to see Joey up on stage, and saw the likes of all the individuals that were in the room. My father and I just kept looking at each other like, oh my gosh, like, this is something. This is something that we're going to be very, very proud to say that we were in the room. And subsequently, my dad and I have gone to a few different events. We were really quite blessed to be at the Young Conference in New York. Got to, my father got to spend a minute with Michael Saylor, and I got to spend a few minutes with Max Kaiser. And there's some great shots of us watching Saylor, watching Max, and he and I having our Max and Stacy Bitcoin Sports Network orange hats on in the crowd. And I'm always gonna, I'm looking forward to being a grandfather and saying, there's me and Bitcoin Poppy in the room. And so for Canadians and Bitcoin enthusiasts in Canada, and those that are excited to go from, because I think most people start retail. You start as an individual, understanding what this is, acquiring it on your personal balance sheet. You're not going right to your business, right? But after you allocate enough, and after you educate yourself enough, your next thing is, okay, well, I have employees, and I have all the fiduciary requirements that come with being an operator of a business and a treasury. And the next logical step is, okay, how do I put Bitcoin on my balance sheet appropriately? What's the appropriate allocation? And then, what can I do with my Bitcoin advantageously? Bitcoin initially for me is a defense mechanism towards deflation, towards overreach. But Bitcoin can then turn into the offensive. And so for all those that want to defend, and for all those that want to go to the next level and go on the offense, this is going to be the place to be, October 1st.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, Waseem, you're good.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm. I was listening to Lawrence Lepard. He launched a new channel. Like I don't know how new it is, but new to me anyway. Called Bitcoin Boomers. So,
Yeah, it's been around for a while, I think.
has it? Okay, well, it's new to me,
Yeah.
man. So, but hey, that's signal for me, right? Like you kind of got the the young crowd and you got the older crowd all talking this language now, right? Trying to kind of talk to their respective communities, right?
Are you,
And you
are
got
you comparing? Are you comparing this to is this a Canadian Bitcoin boomers?
I wouldn't. Ben's far from it. He's Gen X, Gen something anyway. But
Yeah.
no, we're not quite there yet. But I mean, yeah, it's interesting times, right? I think it's. And speaking of interesting times, like there's some historic things going on that starting this next week, right? I think ST SATA, right, will start paying daily dividends. I think as of the 15th is or 16th. And then you've got Stretch as well. STRC is going to start paying it semi-monthly as of July the 15th. So next couple of months are going to be, next time we get on here, it's going to be interesting, right? To have those conversations around digital credit paying, daily dividends. That's historic. That's never happened before in the capital market. So let's see. Jeff Walton will be there. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not to go too far on that, like for all those individuals that are Bitcoin maxis and aren't huge fans of that, I actually like there's two parts of me, right? Like and I completely understand that. But the thing to take from that is STRC is the very first equity to ever be paid semi-monthly in the entire world. And SATA kind of overstepped them in a way and jumped right to daily dividends. And that is not possible with any other asset in the world but Bitcoin. So digital credit, Bitcoin, these equities, Bitcoin doesn't need them, but they need Bitcoin. And so the story is, how is this possible? And it's possible because of Bitcoin.
Perfect. Good place to end on that, Ben. So listen, we're gonna try and do these maybe every week or so, I think, and we'll bring up a lot of the guests that are going to be there. I'm sure we'll have Joey on and a few more. Anybody that's listening online, if you want to reach out, let us know. So, all right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
See you guys.